as we come into this worship service today and we hear the word spoken among us. We begin with this piece from the prophet Daniel. It is a wonderful piece of apocalyptic literature. A piece that is longing, clinging for hope. This is a passage that has been lifted up over and over again about one who is to come. One who is to bring a new way of being in the world. One who is to rule with those who would be gathered around as servants and those who would sing out praise to him. This one who is the messenger, the hope, the promise of the Ancient One. And as we came into worship today, we sang out. We sang out an Advent hymn, Savior of the nations, come. Come. We join our voices with the prophets and those who, over the generations, over the centuries and the eons, have called out for God to send one among us who would make promise known. That in the midst of difficult times, in the midst of frustration and warfare, in the midst of turmoil and earthquakes, of hurricanes, that there would be a steadfast presence of the Holy One here among us. And we sing out, Savior, Messiah, Christ of the nations, come. Come. And then we move forward. We think about what this means. What this means to cry out in longing for one to be made known, and what our visions or expectations would be. My guess is that I would be one, much like the Jewish people of Jesus' time, who were certain, so certain that the Messiah, the Christ, would come among the people and would be a mighty presence. A presence that would topple corrupt governments. A presence that would change these workings of inappropriate activity in the Hebrew temple. Of one who would come and would lead with a new way of being, power and might and wonder for the people. That would be my hope. Would that be your hope? Someone who would come and look at the world around us and change it with one swift stroke of the pen or one quick action. That our lives and the world would be made right. A wonderful image. But what we're told is something different. And it's here that we land in the Gospel of John today. That there is one who comes in hope and in promise. There is one who makes his home among the people. Born simply, we are told, in a manger. Born of a young woman and her older husband, or at that point, fiancé. Illegitimate in the eyes of society, but born there among the people in a place of promise. Who is raised up and at the age of 12 goes into the temple and begins to teach, to impart knowledge and wisdom to leaders. Who at the age of 30 begins to teach the people who gather along the seaside, on the plains, or on the mountain. Who challenges them with stories of what it means to take on empire. But not with swords, not with massive armies, but rather with this good news, this gospel that takes root among the people, of living in profound love, and yes, in profound service. And that lands him before the Roman puppet in Israel, this fellow named Pilate. Because Jesus is calling people to a new way of being and gathering crowds of people around him, the government gets nervous. The temple priests are certainly nervous after he has turned over the tables in the temple and challenged their authority. But now what does it mean for the government to be unstable and for people to begin to talk? To say, have you heard? Have you heard of this one? He comes out of Nazareth, where we never thought anything good could come out of Nazareth, but here he is. And he's coming and doing new things. He's giving people food to eat. There is abundance. He's teaching us about what it means to love God and what it means to care for neighbor. He's opening the eyes of the blind, unstopping the ears of the deaf. And did you hear? There was even one that he raised from the dead. Incredible. Have you heard? And as the rumors start circulating, people get nervous. What happens when God's promise enters in, but it's not in the way that we anticipate, and it's not in the way that a government or an army can simply put it down? What happens when God's promise enters in and begins to change people's hearts and minds? What happens when that promise dwells intimately in and among us? I know that I would have liked to have been privy to this conversation between Pilate and Jesus, because my guess is there was a whole lot more said than what we have here in this gospel. And the piece that's left out of the lectionary text for today, but is there at the end and that I read, I think is so powerful, where Pilate asked Jesus, what is the truth? Boy, I want to be sitting at Jesus' feet for that one. To hear what this truth is and how it's going to change and reshape not only our lives, but the whole world. And I think today we all want to come and cling to that. As we think about friends and family who are recovering from the aftermath of Sandy and the nor'easter on the East Coast, or as we think about this tentative ceasefire in Israel and Palestine, or about those who have been affected by earthquakes in Guatemala, our minds are still reeling with what does it mean for Jesus, for the Holy One, to come and make a home among